the Mexican government wanted to crack down on Ervil because I think they were, and they point out that it's possible that they were cracking down on Ervil because they didn't want another Jonestown on their hands, which a year prior there was a mass unaliving of 918 people.
Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis.
I'm Michael.
And we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on this show range from theology, masculinity, stories, movies, philosophy, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We often talk about the people we admire and the wisdom that they share. People such as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Come here for the polygamy, stick around for the philosophy. Michael, why are we here?
Today we are talking about our third episode on discussing the Hulu's docuseries that they did called The Daughters of the Cult.
I was 13 years old the day I escaped my father's cult. It was very frightening because I knew if somebody saw me, that was the end.
Our father was the leader of a Mormon religious cult.
Our dad had 13 wives.
He was more revered than Jesus.
This is the third episode entitled Manhunt. And we've been just kind of discussing this. Who brought this out? And we grew up in the polygamous group, the AUB, ran by Rulin Allred, who was murdered by or under the orders of Ervil LaBaron, which and Ervil LaBaron is what this docuseries is about.
Yep. It interviews his two daughters and they give their perspective how life was in a Mormon polygamous cult. And since we grew up in a very similar situation, although our that we know of are the one we grew up in didn't order hits on people, so that was very different. In
learning about the LaBaron group, you kind of, I don't know, I kind of realized, I was just like, man, I feel like
we had it good.
My childhood was probably a walk in the park compared to
these people.
All these. Yeah. It's so luckily not as bad. I'm sure that there were probably families within the AUB that
have had it bad.
They talk in this in this series, they talk a little bit to like child labor, and I mean our nephew we had on feels like he was child labored, which is, I don't think is a far stretch. I think that's probably right, that he was probably child labored. But moving on from that, this is the episode where they catch Rena. One thing that I thought was super sad is that one of LaBaron's sons, he's like 6 years old at the time. Here's a knock on the door, and he goes and opens the door, and it's the federales, so this is in Mexico, come through the door and arrest Rena. And he, so sad. He had, unfortunately, as a kid, like, that's some real childhood trauma.
Yeah.
You open the door and they come in and they take one of your mothers away. And
his name is Hiram LaBaron. They actually interview him as an adult, and he talks a lot. But that's not the only trauma that he suffered. Yeah. Like there's more to come in later episodes. But that's one of the things that he remembers doing. He remembers just sleepy-eyed, opening up the door for the federales to come in, and then held a bunch of guilt over it for years because he was part of a cult, and they're going to punish him for things that, as a child, you don't really know that you're doing. So,
yeah. And it wasn't at this house, but it was close there by that they went into another house, and he was with one of his other wives, and they caught Ervil. And this time they keep him.
Yeah.
Because the last time they caught him, he even claimed he was Ervil, and they let him go because they didn't believe him.
Which is an idiotic thing. But in this series, they mention Jonestown, which was a. Why don't you explain?
Yeah, the Mexican government wanted to crack down on Ervil because I think they were, and they point out that it's possible that they were cracking down on Ervil because they didn't want another Jonestown on their hands. Which a year prior, Jonestown happened. There was a mass unaliving of 916 people. 918 people. Jim Jones, the People's Temple, moved to a southern is Gaia.
Yeah. And it's a South American country, and it basically they all took poison and died. It was one of the. It's gone down in history as the biggest, mass unaliving of ever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's also where the term "don't drink the Kool-Aid" comes from.
Yeah.
Don't drink the Kool-Aid as in, don't just follow your leader blindly. Don't just follow what you hear without questioning it, that kind of stuff. And so the Mexican government, a year ago heard about this Jonestown just terrible happening, and they just did not want that to happen in their country. So they started to crack down to find Ervil. And that's why they ended up catching him and extraditing him to the United States.
Yeah. And he stood trial for, even though Rena Chinoth got acquitted for the murder of Allred, they were not as lenient with Ervil because they knew that Ervil was the mastermind. And so he ended up And
his son Isaac came forward and testified against him.
And his story is a tragic one because he was really young when he testified against him. He was 16, I think, when he testified against him, and then he held a bunch of guilt over it for a long period of time. In later episodes, you find out that he was actually he actually unalived himself to because of the guilt.
Guilt or just being part of all. It's just, and they I think they say that there was in association with all this, there was something like 9 unalivings from that they know of through all this. It's
which is
sad. These kids, they grow up in this and then realize the lies, the falseness, the blood that was shed, that maybe they even had directly or indirectly kind of a part in. Just how would you live through that? That's one of the sad
that's like the sad tragedy of the ending of, towards the ending of this, but it's sad because not only this, but in Mormonism, they believe, or at least we were taught, that when you unalive yourself, you're basically committing a murder. And so you will be judged at Judgment Day, for your own, killing. And so, and this is kind of taught in in Mormonism as kind of a way to dissuade unalivings. So the problem is that there, even if it's true or not true, it doesn't really matter. They believed it was true. So at that point, they're committing something.
They were okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a pretty dark place to find yourself in if you're going to do that.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, but you can understand, like, it's generational trauma and caused by brought on by one man, one evil man who convinced everybody, and he was convinced. He was even convinced of his own, deity of whatever you wanted to call it. So there's, if you wanted to analyze Ervil LaBaron, he probably had a mental disorder of some kind as well.
Yeah,
psychopathy of some kind.
Probably. Yeah, psychopath. I mean,
sociopath.
Could have been schizophrenic.
Yeah.
I mean, there could have been a myriad of things.
So the TV movie that we keep mentioning in this series, the TV movie called The Prophet of Evil that was made in the early 90s with Brian Dennehy starring. Brian Dennehy plays him as a crazy person. Like, he uses his eyes to kind of convince, and a lot of the scenes just are close-ups of his eyes, of him railing against, the evils of the world and stuff like that. And he is portrayed in that movie as a crazy person. So,
yeah.
Thou shalt surely kill him. Shall be first upon him to put him to death. Thus saith the Lord, and thus saith the servant of the Lord.
Yeah.
So there's that.
And I want to say, so he is found guilty and he gets life in prison. I want to say that it was just the Rulon murder that put him away. Yeah. I don't think they even got him for
the murders in Mexico.
The murders in Mexico, the shootout that they had where 2 people were killed.
Yeah, the raid. They called it the raid.
Yeah, the raid. So I don't even think that they got him on any of those things. It was the murder of Rulon Allred that put him away.
Put him away.
Which, I mean, to be honest, I mean, you got to find something and you put him away. So you do it.
Yeah.
Right. He was only in prison for what, a year, I think,
before he killed himself. Or no, he didn't.
No,
he didn't kill himself.
He passed away from what they think was probably a heart attack, but I guess there might be some shadow.
There's
around.
a conspiracy that maybe somebody. Yeah, I don't know. Not in a prison. I guess Epstein. Epstein.
I mean, look at Epstein. I don't know.
Maybe he did.
Apparently, there's not a lot of because I guess the coroner put it down as a heart attack, but there's I don't know. There's been some thoughts on whether or not and if they ever did do a polygamy Game of Thrones type documentary or not documentary but drama. like Under the Banner of Heaven, they'd probably have some fun with that little bit of not
mystery
knowing. So
unfortunately,
before he passed away, he wanted his followers to come break him out.
Oh yeah, so he basically wrote his manifesto in that time frame, from when he gets put in prison.
What in that job?
Yeah, so he
break me out of prison.
Yeah, and his devout followers were trying to figure it out. I think what's the Dan Jordan?
Jordan.
He was trying.
He probably was on the case, would be my guess.
Yeah,
but he wanted him to come in guns a-blazing.
Yeah,
and
in a federal prison. Yeah,
and
right.
Break him out. Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. So the thing is if he had lived long enough, some kind of attempt like that probably would have
happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
don't doubt that.
His followers are nutty enough. And there's like, we're only 3 episodes in.
Ooh. So if on the law, oh yeah, sorry. Finish your thought.
Well, I was just saying, like, we're only 3 episodes in. There's still 2 more episodes to go, which means that the killings didn't end with his death. Like, there were more killings, and it's crazy to think that. And I think I mentioned in our previous episode, so this is pretty much where they stop killing outside of the group. It becomes internal. So the group that they're a part of, they're the Ervil LaBaron group, they start killing each other off. And it's just so toxically evil that it's just this ball of, like, everybody's like, oh, you betrayed Ervil, and so now we got to get
Game of Thrones,
you.
baby.
Yeah,
Game
of
Thrones.
Total Game of Thrones kind of shit.
Yep.
Well, so Rena Chnoff,
conspiracy.
She disappears from this story here. Basically, they take her statement, she's acquitted, and other than a couple of interviews she did in the 80s, like, she disappears. And I don't even know if she's alive. There's no way to tell whether she's alive or not.
I mean, she may have gone into hiding. Yeah, for reals.
So
if you've got these crazies,
but it wasn't even her testimony that got him convicted. It was Isaac's testimony that got him convicted. His son. His son, who decided that he was going to turn on him, and his son was connected to the daughter that disappeared pretty heavily, according to reports, and he didn't believe Ervil when they said that she just disappeared. He thought that she had been killed because she was a liability, because she was mentally unstable. So that may have been his motivation to testify against his father. So what's really interesting about this is that it's not just cult, but this is when it starts delving into, like, almost like a cartel. Like, they become a family cartel where, or a family of petty crimes. And instead of, like an organized crime syndicate kind of thing, they start offing off people that may have left the group. And so it gets pretty dark pretty quick after Ervil dies. And Ervil dies, supposed heart attack, but not before he gets his manifesto out, what's the book called?
The New Covenant. So the Book of New Covenant.
The Book of the New Covenant. Jeez. That's culty sounding.
Yeah.
Culty. We're going to have to start, like, coin a phrase, like, it's very culty.
If you want to go down the rabbit hole of conspiracies, if I don't know, it's interesting that if you knew that there were some cult followers out there, that if this guy Ervil stays alive, that are going to eventually at some point assault this where he is, so that they can break him out, and a lot of guards and other inmates will end up dying because of it. Do you think that there's that possibility they may have offed him just to put it away?
You mean like the federal government?
Like the federal government,
just
the authorities.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they think that far ahead. It's a stretch.
Hey, what's a good conspiracy theory if it's
without
not
a stretch?
Stretching
the truth a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's just thinking about it, like.
Well, I don't think they were that concerned about it, because his group was like maybe 1,000 people. It was like 500. It was.
I don't know how many.
Really small.
How big it was. So
because Ruling All Reds group at the time was about 2,500. It was somewhere in that.
Yeah. Oh, it was probably bigger than that.
No,
it was probably bigger than that.
I think that was the number. It was somewhere in the
Really?
2000s. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's either, and it grows and shrinks. People leave, people realize that they're in a cult and get out,
Mhm.
that's kind of stuff. But, and because of nefarious motivations, people join, who knows? But but Rulon or Ervil's group was pretty small. Like, it wasn't a big group. And
Mhm.
that's why he was jealous of Allred,
Rulon.
because he
Yeah.
wanted that.
He wanted his tithing money.
I don't think he was motivated by money, because he lived in squalor. I think David Jordan, who was his right-hand man, I think he was motivated by money.
Or
But
Dan Jordan was motivated by money.
Yeah,
Sure. I think
yeah.
it's all part of the power. So like the more money, the more things,
More influence, the more wives,
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
it's all about the power.
It's power based. Yeah. Yeah. And the more that a guy gets power, the more he wants, it seems like. Especially if he's a little off his rocker and a little crazy upstairs. The more he gets, the more he wants. So I don't know, little crazy. So, which is the best way to put it, I guess. But Rena, unfortunately and sadly, disappears from the story after this. They barely. But her brother, what was his first name? Was it Luke?
Mark.
Mark Chinoff.
That's her brother. Oh, it is her brother. Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And then Lillian is a LaBaron that married Mark Chinoff. And Mark and Lillian kind of turn into a little bit of the good guys of this story.
Yeah, they do.
Because they kind of grow to be liberal, and they want to help some of these kids get out.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on episode 3? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, eventually we'll do a episode on Jonestown, on Jim Jones. That would, I think, be an interesting deep dive. It's just crazy to see how one evil man's influence, and we'll get into it a little bit, because he dies in prison in this episode, but we'll get into it that even beyond the grave,
he's still got
followers are he's still influencing for evil. Which I think is just another reason why this would make for good television, good drama, entertainment. I don't think, I mean, Under the Banner of Heaven, I really like it. It was a dark enjoyment, but like I really was enthralled with that story. And that story, sorry guys, that story doesn't hold a candle
to the LaBarons.
Yeah. So Hulu,
get on that.
You want to make some money?
Let's do the drama version of this. So so stay tuned for the next episode. We're gonna go back, we're gonna keep doing this, and it's unfortunate the manifesto gets out. This is my final thoughts on this episode, because if that manifesto didn't get out, the book that he wrote, that book had a list of people on it that he wanted to die. He wanted to get rid of them. And there's a bunch of people on that list. That list gets smuggled out with his manifesto, and it basically creates in his followers in Mexico, creates this basically another side group. And we've talked about the splintering of groups when they when their leaders die. And so there were like 3 splinters after he died. And one of them was extremely militant and decided that they needed to conduct hits on with this hit list. So, so that's for the next episode. Thanks for that, brother. And I guess we'll call it good. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. See you, brother.
See ya.